Hello, my friends. It's Wednesday, December 24th, 2025, and I'm your host, Radical Russ Melville, your Red State refugee. And welcome to the Radical Russ Show, your weekday morning wake and bake, coming to you from Rolla J Studios in Southern Oregon. On today's smoke session, let's talk about how the incompetency of the fascists is saving us all, why transgender people are the right's main victim, and I take more time to process how the hospital in Susanville traumatized my stepdaughter. But before we get to all the serious political stuff, we've got time for 3 quick hits. If you've been following me for a while, you know things have been difficult here at the Belleville-Duckworth household with regard to our family and the situation with my granddaughter and the loss of her pregnancy. And I'll talk about that more at the end of the program. But I also want to give a shout out to my lady love, who's been having to deal with all of this stress and strain. And she's been doing so like a champ. And it's not bad enough that she's got to worry about her granddaughter, her grandson, all of these little babies that are going on, but she also has her own health issues to deal with, mainly some severe damage to her lower spine. And she just had to go in for a couple of MRIs on this to determine what's going on. And as we're reading the MRIs, it did kind of make me chuckle because they're naming these possible syndromes that could be the problem. And one of them is called Brody's abscess. Sounded really terrible. Brody's abscess. And the other one is called Schmorl's node. S-C-H-M-O-R-L-S. Schmorl's node. And it got me to thinking about that old line about Lou Gehrig's disease that Norm Macdonald used to put out. You know, what a damn shame. They got the disease, had my name written all over it, right? and I got to thinking about, you know, these scientists, these doctors, these researchers that are presented with this brand new condition, whatever it is, and they can't come up with a name for it. Bob, what the hell do you think that is? I don't know. I've never seen a node like that before. Yeah, that's the weirdest node I've ever seen. What should we call it? A abnormal node? An infected node? No. What's this guy's name? Schmorl? Yeah, let's just call it Schmorl's node. You gotta think, poor Schmorl was like, no, please. Let's not make my name associated with some horrible spinal condition. Thank you, I'd rather not. Like, you gotta feel for those guys. There ought to be some sort of rule. They ought to get some sort of royalties, right? Like Lou Gehrig, his family should get some sort of royalty every time someone is diagnosed. I don't know, it just doesn't seem right to me. And speaking of strange names, this deal where Donald Trump has to put his name feces all over things, smear it all over stuff that he himself can't possibly put together. And lately, it's this Trump Kennedy Center. You caught this, right? The Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts. Well, first of all, he can't rename the damn thing. It was named by an act of Congress. So just like the Department of Defense was named by Congress and can't be renamed, and the Gulf of Mexico was named by cartographers 500 years ago, Trump just can't stand it. He's got to put his name all over the stuff he couldn't build himself. And so it's funny to me on a few levels. First of all, the Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center is grammatically incorrect. The article "the" is referring to the Center for Performing Arts, and then the John F. Kennedy part coming after the and before the center acts as an adjective to describe the center. It is the John F. Kennedy Center. So if you call it the Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Center, you're now no longer referring to the center, you're referring to the two antecedents. Anyway, I know grammatical quibbling with this president is kind of ridiculous. But the funny part of it is that it's the Memorial Center. Like, it's named after someone who's dead. We are memorializing a dead person. So I don't know if that is part of the intent. Then hey, go for it, man. We can memorialize Donald Trump all you want if that's going to hasten the process of cholesterol or whatever it is that's finally going to take out this orange shit gibbon. But then I also have to think of the actual ceremony itself. So the Donald J. Trump and the John F. Kennedy Memorial Center for the Performing Arts had a board. And then Donald J. Trump went and sacked the board and appointed all his own people, like freaking Lee Greenwood is on the board. Then the board goes and anoints him as the chairman of the board, which, oh, he was so surprised. I'm so surprised. Gosh, what an honor. I guess I'll do it. And then decides that the chairman, the board then decides to ask the chairman to host the awards, which he then accepts. It's so pathetic. The narcissism is so pathetic. And I gotta feel bad for people. I mean, a lot of people are commenting on this saying how awful it is. I actually think it's a good thing that Trump last night hosted this Kennedy Center thing, and then it's now called the Trump Kennedy Center, because there's a lot of people out there that are apathetic about politics, normies who aren't tuning in, who don't really pay attention. Yeah, orange man bad, whatever. And they don't really have a good feel for the extent of how crazy it's gotten. So I can imagine some of these normies, right, flipping through the channel guides or whatever, and they see, oh, Kennedy Center honors. Oh, interesting. Yeah, maybe I'll watch that. Oh, Kiss. He's going to honor Kiss. And then they turn the channel, and the only old man they find in pancake makeup is the host, Donald Trump, in his orange face. And then he's got to honor Kiss, which is really just Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, without makeup. And I don't know if you've seen Paul Stanley lately without makeup, but yeah, go back to the makeup, fellas. Stallone's there. He's had so much work done as well. And then Gloria Gaynor, the I Will Survive disco singer, apparently is MAGA. So you can imagine the night. Gloria Gaynor up there singing I Will Survive. The orange-faced dictator on stage doing his double jerk-off dance. I hope everybody in America saw that so they can get an idea of just how insane a times we are living through. And then for this holiday season, this Christmas Eve, of course, we have a wonderful story of giving and kindness who comes from one of the best Christians I can name. And I don't have in my book here a whole lot of people that I consider good Christians who give the religion a good name. It's a short list, man. I got Dolly Parton. I got Bob Ross, Fred Rogers. You know, these are some good Christian people. Jimmy Carter, definitely. Add to that list Rick Steves. You know Rick Steves from PBS. He's the travel writer who writes all the Europe guidebooks, Europe Through the Back Door. He's been on for a couple decades now. And I'm proud to say that I got to work with Rick Steves on numerous occasions. He was a chairman of the board of Normal for a while. He's been on the Normal board. He's donated millions to the cause of marijuana legalization. He's toured Oregon and other states when they were putting together legalization initiatives. I got to MC events that he was at. I've interviewed him on my podcast numerous times. I'm proud to call him a friend, and I hope he calls me a friend as well. Well, Rick Steves, who was also named Lutheran of the Year once, stepped up in his hometown area, Seattle, Washington. There's a suburb there called Linwood, and there's this hygiene center that has been set up for people who are experiencing homelessness, so they can get a shower, they can wash their hands and wash their clothes, you know, get some hygiene, you know, something that Jesus would do, right? Well, apparently this Linwood Hygiene Center had been open for years and people had come to rely on it, and then it fell on hard times and was losing its funding and was going to close down. And all these folks without homes were in desperate straits, wondering when they're going to get clean, get a shower, wash their clothes. Rick Steves stepped up this week and spent, I believe it was $2 million to just buy the damn thing. This guy who's got millions and millions of dollars just stepped up to spend $2 million to help homeless folks in his neighborhood. I can't think of a more Christian thing someone could do. And if more of the Christians out there were behaving like Rick Steves, this would be a much, much better country.
Our top story tonight.
Our top story tonight.
Elisa Francisco Franco is still dead.
Is still dead.
On our main story today, I want to talk about the incompetency of the fascists that we're dealing with. We've seen a couple examples of this week that have to be mentioned. First of all, this Barry Weiss debacle. Barry Weiss, of course, is the right-wing propagandist with absolutely zero experience in televised media, and only the slightest bit of experience in print media, and that was as someone in the opinion side of things. So zero experience in news, taking over the flagship program of CBS News, 60 Minutes, the multiple award-winning, multiple decade program. The first news magazine, really, that it started the whole genre. So she has taken over 60 Minutes, and of course she has turned it into a propaganda factory to support Donald J. Trump. Due to air this weekend on 60 Minutes was this story on CCOT, the terrorism concentration camp that we are operating down there in El Salvador. Well, we've contracted to operate or contracted to send our people. You know the story. CCOT down there in El Salvador, the terrible torture prison where they sent Kilmar Abrego Garcia, where we saw all the men having their heads shaved, where they sent the gay hairdresser, Andre, who they've released now. But they sent people who had absolutely no criminal records, people just rounded up just because they spoke Spanish, brown skin, were from Venezuela, they had some tattoos. So what? It was a tattoo for mom and dad. That means they're gang members. They're Tren de Aragua, and we've got to throw them in the hole, torture them. So that's what's been going on at CCOT. And so 60 Minutes had put together this piece investigating CCOT and interviewing some of the men who had been in CCOT, but then had been released in a prisoner exchange, 100 some odd Venezuelans for 10 Americans that had been held in Venezuela. And so these men, speaking in Spanish, were detailing the terrible conditions and the torture they were put under, no clean running water, having to drink sewage water, and all sorts of just awful, awful conditions. Put into solitary confinement with no light, just a dark black box that they had to be in solitary confinement. So this was the story that was set to air on 60 Minutes, and at the last minute, Barry Weiss, head of CBS News, decided to spike the story. We're not going to show the story. And people started to wail about this because it seemed to be obviously a political favor to Donald J. Trump. But unbeknownst to Barry Weiss, the clip still got out there. People had a copy of this clip online. And it's being shared throughout all the social media. And every time it would pop up, Barry Weiss and CBS and Paramount would file a copyright strike to get it taken down. But then someone else would get it. It would pop up and you'd see it for a while, and then a copyright strike would take it down. And then somebody finally got smart and just chopped it up into 5 little 3-minute videos that you could just embed directly on social media so they couldn't be taken down. And so the question that was percolating around is, oh my God, well, first of all, the Streisand effect, if Barry Weiss had just let the damn thing air on 60 Minutes, a bunch of old folks might have watched it. It might have got shared a couple times on social media and then it'd been over, especially during Christmas week when there's, nobody's paying attention, hardly anything's going on. But in deciding to spike the story, the Streisand effect kicked in. Everybody wants to know, well, what is it she doesn't want us to see? What doesn't she want us to see? And everybody starts passing it around, and finally everybody sees the damn thing. And then the question following that was, who leaked it? who at CBS News, because one of the producers spoke up about it, had posted online that, this was a travesty for her to spike the story. It's obvious political considerations. It was well researched. It was completely vetted by legal, blah, blah, blah. And so there was some speculation. Was it that person who had leaked the story? Was it someone else at CBS who had leaked the story? Well, we found out who leaked the story at CBS. It was Bari Weiss herself. See, apparently when she spiked the story going out over 60 Minutes in the United States, she forgot to also check that the story was going through another feed called Global TV, which is an app that it's like a news aggregator that you got on your smart TV in all sorts of places in the world. And so it went out over Global TV app, and people in Canada got to see it like at the regular scheduled time. And I don't know if this also appeared in other countries through the Global TV app, but it certainly came through in Canada. So it was Bari Weiss herself, from her own incompetence and not knowing how to run news, knowing where all the news is being distributed, what platforms it's going through. Bari Weiss's own incompetence got the CCOT story out there, and because of all the cover-up of it, got it noticed and watched and passed around far more than it would have been if it had just aired on 60 Minutes. So it's their incompetence of these fascists that are going to be their undoing. Thank God they're not competent. The other example that happened this weekend, of course, was this week, was the release of the Epstein files. The DOJ is supposed to release all the Epstein files completely unredacted, except for protecting the names of victims. And what do we get? Absolute redaction protecting the names of perpetrators. Redactions for the politicians involved, redactions for the court staff involved in the grand jury testimonies. One of the documents is 119 pages of just black. All black, completely wiped out the black ink cartridge in the printer on that one. So everybody's screaming to high hell about, the cover-up is still going on. You're still covering things up. You're still redacting all this stuff. And yet, once again, their incompetence will be the end of them, because many people found in the latest dump of these Epstein files that the redactions weren't so redacted. That what these people did is loaded these documents up into PDF or, Adobe, whatever. And through the PDF files, clicked and dragged and highlighted over the words that needed to be redacted and colored them black over the top, right? Like how you have the yellow highlighter feature in a word processor and highlight, click and drag and it highlights all the word yellow, black text on yellow background. Well, they just picked a black background and highlighted all the words. So it was black text on black background, so you couldn't read the words, right? Unless you take that PDF file, highlight all the text, press Control-C to copy it, flip over to Notepad, which doesn't have any color in it, it's just raw text, do a paste, voila! There's all your text without any redactions. So major sections of these documents that were all blacked out aren't all blacked out. People can just copy and paste them and read exactly what they had to say. And much of it was stuff we already know. Donald Trump's name's all over the Epstein files multiple times. One of the documents said something to the effect of, hey, as Ghislaine Maxwell is going to trial here, we thought we'd give you a heads up that Donald Trump's name appears on the flight logs way more times than previously reported. This might be a problem. We all know what's going on here. Everybody knows Trump is in the Epstein files. It seems pretty clear from testimonies, multiple testimonies, that he was involved in raping these young girls on the island or elsewhere, Palm Beach, maybe Manhattan. And I brought this up when I brought this up online, and as I was responding to it, I added the little tagline: Google Katie Johnson. Now, if you don't know, Katie Johnson was a 13-year-old girl who, at the time, filed allegations in court that she was raped by both Trump and Epstein, and that Trump had physically abused her as well, slapped her around for not being good enough at oral sex, and had a fight with Epstein because he should have taken her virginity, not Epstein. It's really sick stuff, folks, really sick. Google Katie Johnson. But I had someone come back in my comments on that and say, well, you can't allege that he raped this 13-year-old girl. You can only say with any factual accuracy that he was accused of raping a 13-year-old girl. Because she dropped her charges. She dropped the case and maybe it was never adjudicated. Okay, so first of all, let's set aside whether or not a 13-year-old girl would put herself through the trauma of trying to testify against a rich and powerful man who had threatened her and threatened her family, that maybe this girl might have been coerced into pulling those charges, pulling that suit. But let's put that aside here. We're supposed to take the benefit of the doubt for Donald J. Trump, huh? We're supposed to say it's just alleged that he raped this 13-year-old girl. Well, you're right. You're absolutely right. We should be absolutely factually accurate about this man who openly lusted for his daughter, who cheated on his first wife, and according to her testimony in a case, raped her and ripped her hair out. We should be absolutely accurate that this guy, who then cheated on his first wife with the woman who would become his second wife, and then when she had a daughter, mused about whether or not this daughter would inherit his second wife's breasts and legs, and then cheated on that second wife as well with the woman who would become his third wife, Melania Naus, who got an Einstein visa to come to the United States. And then he cheated on his third wife with a Playboy model named Karen McDougal, and then cheated on the Karen McDougal Playboy model with a porn star named Stormy Daniels, and was doing so while his third wife was nursing his fifth son. And the guy who openly bragged about sneaking into the teenage beauty pageants backstage that he owned to ogle the girls that they would let him do it. And the guy who admitted on the Access Hollywood tape that he likes to grab women by the pussy, and while you're a star, they let you do it, and who has been credibly accused by at least 24 women in court of all sorts of sexual improprieties, and has been actually adjudicated in court of raping E. Jean Carroll, and then convicted twice for defaming her over that, was only accused by a 13-year-old girl of raping her. So let's make sure we have that straight. And it's just sick that here we are clamoring for the release of the Epstein files to somehow prove that Donald Trump is some sort of lecherous, rapist, pervert, asshole, when the evidence is clear. I mean, how much more circumstantial evidence do you need to pile up for this guy? You can't possibly believe all of these women are trying to set him up, that it's all a conspiracy against poor Donald J. Trump. We have all the women. We have all of their testimonies and their stories. The truth will come out. We're going to get eventually the release of these Epstein files. If it takes us retaking the Congress as Democrats, retaking the presidency, the truth will eventually come out. And so the question here is, what is the base waiting for? Like, they know he's been involved with this, and so why isn't there holy hell hair on fire screaming about this? And I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about the rape culture that the United States has seeped into, And I think that has a lot to do with it. I think for his base, they can overlook 16 and 17. I think when they look at the pictures, even with the blacked out boxes that are coming from Mar-a-Lago, where there's Trump and the like 7 or 8 young women around him, I think for his base, they don't see much gap between 16 and 21. I think they see that age of 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old women as capable and intelligent and able to consent. Despite the laws of consent not being 16, 17 there, I think in their social mind, they think that that's an area for consent. You see it in how they support child marriage, in these red states. They still allow for child marriage and things like Romeo and Juliet statutes where someone's, within 3 years of the teenage girl that it's okay. She's 16 and he's 19. It's okay, right? That they kind of see this evolving level of consent that, like, if you're 16 or 17, 18, you're getting to this point where you know what sex is and you know why you want to engage in sex. And again, I'm not saying this. I'm saying this is what I think the MAGA base thinks, right? Because they're into that child marriage, get married young, your eggs are going to expire. We've got to pump out more white babies as quick as possible, right? So I think when all these allegations come up of all these 16, 17-year-old girls, these teenage girls in bikinis, they can forgive it. They can hand wave it away. They can say, they're gold diggers. Those girls, they're from the wrong side of the tracks, looking for an opportunity. Here's a rich man. They're looking for a sugar daddy. They're looking, the men are looking for a young girl. They both get something in the transaction. They're not so innocent, right? I really do. I really do think that's where the base is on this. Like, those girls knew what they were doing. They can excuse them as being bad girls, naughty girls, gold diggers, right? So why I think this whole Epstein cover-up thing is happening, why I think Trump and all these people are working so hard to redact so many of these things, is because I don't think his base can go to 13. I think they can look at 16 or 17 and say, yeah, okay, that girl's physically mature. You can see how a man would look at a body like that and have lust in his heart, even if maybe it's not right, legally. I can see them thinking that, but when you start ratcheting that age down to 14, down to 13, and we're seeing more and more of these documents from Epstein talking about girls of that age, I don't think they can hand wave that one away. I think even to these hardcore Christian types and MAGA types, 13, 14, that's just a little bit too far. And I think that's what this cover-up's all about. So I've seen some suggestions about this where, as the cover-up continues, I see a lot of people online saying the women should name names. They should just come out and name names. And there's all sorts of reasons why they can't, right? The possible threats to themselves and their family, lawsuits that would bankrupt them and their descendants for years to come, right? We get all that. But there was some talk, Marjorie Taylor Greene brought this up, I think Thomas Massey did as well, that the survivors could compile a list of all the names, and then Massey or Greene or anybody from Congress could then read those names on the House floor, and being protected by the speech and debate clause of the Constitution, nobody could sue them. And they've been holding this kind of in reserve as kind of like the nuclear option. Like, okay, come on, Epstein files, we'll pass this Transparency Act, we'll force the Department of Justice to release these files unredacted. Let's see how that works. But if it doesn't, we got the nuclear option in our back pocket. We'll just read the names on the House floor. So I got to thinking about how we ought to do that for maximum effect, and I've come up with a plan. I call it pedo de jure. pedophile of the day works like this. Get all the survivors together, have them tally up which men raped them, and then tally up all of the men and organize them in order, descending order, from the most egregious offender to the least. I don't know, maybe by number of victims, or number of victims times number of times, or just total number of victimizations. I don't know how you want to rank it, what number you want to come up with. Let's say just total victims for now, right? So you make an announcement that if the Department of Justice does not begin to release the full unredacted files, one congressperson per day on a rotating basis, so it's not always the same one, MTG one day, Massey the next day, Mace the next day, whoever else wants to get in line, Ro Khanna, whoever else. But one per day. We're going to take this list that the survivors gave us, listed in descending order of who had the most victims, and we're going to release the name of the number one perpetrator on Monday. On Tuesday, we'll release the name of the number two perpetrator. On Wednesday, number 3. On Thursday, number 4. So every day, there is a drip, 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 a brand new pedophile, pedo du jour, released on that day. And the media's focus will be 100% like a magnifying glass on an ant, beaming sunlight down on it. This is the guy. This is the worst pedophile from Epstein's Island. He had 20 victims, 20 separate victims who he raped multiple times and paid for it. Bob Johnson, or whatever the hell his name is. Sorry if anyone's named Bob Johnson out there. That's just always my generic name. Imagine the media pressure on this one guy who's been identified as the worst pedophile on Epstein Island. But then also think of the pedophiles behind him. You're a guy who had 18 victims. The guy who just had 20 victims was announced today. You don't know if there's somebody that's had 19 victims or not. So you know, tomorrow, either that guy's name with 19 is being released, or it's you on the chopping block. It's you under the scrutiny of the media all day as the pedophile of the day. Maybe you're a guy with 16 and you're thinking, well, maybe it'll be this week. I don't know how many guys are in line ahead of me. So you set up this kind of competition, this fear, building day by day from all these pedophiles who are lower on the list. Is it my day? Am I going to be on the chopping block today? And all that pressure from underneath starts to get these guys to start thinking. This is like one of these prisoner's dilemma kind of things where, like, if we just keep our mouths shut, day by day, they're going to pick one of us off, and each one of us is going to get the full scrutiny of the media. Wouldn't it be better if all our names came out at once, so that not any one of us was the pedophile of the day, but we're just like the whole flock of pedophiles? Wouldn't that be better? By setting up that sort of situation, when you get all the way down to the bottom of the list, where there's the guy who was the one-time Epstein Island visitor, who had one victim one time, that victim never could have named that perpetrator without him knowing for sure she was the one who named him. And after all these victims have gotten together and compiled their list, they're going to know who are the single-digit pedophiles out there. There can be a whole group of those guys, and they're all going to fear if they outed that one guy knows they're the ones who snitched, and then all the consequences come. But if we have this Hunger Games thing, this pedo du jour thing happening where the bigger pedophiles force the outing of all the pedophiles, then it not only distributes the blame amongst the pedophiles, but also protects the victims, in a sense, with an anonymity of them not knowing who outed them, or them all being outed in a group and can't take out everybody at once. So that's my idea. Pedo Credo du jour. Name a pedophile a day until the whole list comes out.
They don't vote Democrat, they don't drive Cadillacs, and they never use personal vehicles.
All right, I also wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with the right. They're having one of their little Turning Point USA conferences, the first one since the assassination of its leader, Charlie Kirk. And one of the talking heads out there is a guy named Benny Johnson. He's this conservative commentator who apparently in this MAGA civil war is being accused of being secretly gay. But I don't want to get into that today, just adding that as a little background to what he has to say about transgender people. So here's the post. He says, I called out by name the true evil demonic force that took Charlie Kirk from live on stage at America Fest. Transgenderism. The epidemic of transgender violence is running rampant in our country. Transgenderism is a lie. God made male and female. God did not make you in the wrong body. God does not make mistakes. Charlie's final words warned of this threat. The very ideology that claimed his life. His death exposed the danger. His legacy demands we confront it. Openly, unapologetically, without fear. Thank God the Trump administration is doing just that. End quote. So, first of all, the only epidemic of transgender violence running rampant in this country is the epidemic of violence against transgender people. Transgender people are far more likely to be the victims of violence than the perpetrators of it. Way, 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 way more likely. But the other thing I want to get to is his thing. He says, God made male and female. God did not make you in the wrong body. God did not make mistakes. Well, okay, positing the existence of a God for the first place. There are intersex people, Benny. There are intersex people. There are hermaphrodites. There are people who are born with both male and female genitalia. So, is that your God making a mistake? If God doesn't make mistakes, as you posit, then the existence of intersex people must be something that God intended, right? Since God does not make mistakes. They want to try to tie this to transgender people because the shooter in this situation supposedly had a transgender girlfriend. And so it was Charlie Kirk speaking out against transgender people that caused this person who loved a transgender person to want to take out Charlie Kirk for saying, you know, transgender people are an abomination and should be eradicated from society. Okay. Seems like you kind of explained the situation. Wasn't necessarily transgenderism that killed Charlie Kirk, but his calling for violence against transgender people. But I want to examine why the right is always using the trans issue as their backup, as their go-to to get people to hate. And the reason why, in my mind, is because the other side, our side, Democrats, liberals, the left, are also squishy on the transgender issue. They attack it because they sense it correctly as a weakness. They see it as a weakness among Democrats because we do not properly stand up for transgender people. And I understand why in some respects. First of all, the weak area in the transgender issue is sports and prisons, right? We've gotten to the point in society where I think most people, normies out there, like, are of the attitude, hey, if you're a dude who wants to wear a dress and paint your nails and call yourself Sally, that's fine. You can go to your work and wear a skirt or whatever. I don't care. That's fine. Whatever you want to do. But they have an issue when it gets to sports and the prisons. And it's difficult, and the issue is made more difficult because of the outliers. Like, if there's a trans girl. Oh, and one other thing. Let's just make clear that we're talking about transgender women whenever there's a controversy. Nobody seems to have any controversy over transgender men. They just recently had this deal in Texas where the Texas state troopers actually had to post outside of the women's restroom in the Capitol. I think it was at the Capitol, because activists were trying to use the women's restroom, trans activists and other people trying to make a point. And so they literally had state troopers outside the women's room to check IDs to make sure the gender marker on your ID said female before you could go into the restroom. But they had no such guards at the men's room. Because nobody gives a shit about trans men. Nobody cares about the trans man issue. Trans man wants to play sports. Trans man wants to use a bathroom. Trans man gets sentenced to prison. Nobody cares. There's no controversy whatsoever. So why is it always controversy with trans women? For a few reasons. For one, our society sees women as sex objects and men as the people that use those objects. So when a man becomes a woman, that doesn't compute to them. It's why you see, when you see their opposition to drag shows and kids seeing drag, oh my God, we can't let the children see a drag show, be exposed to all that overt sexuality, all those sexual situations. They see men in women's clothing as overtly sexual. And you can only see that if you think women are primarily sex objects. What is it about looking like a woman, dressing like a woman that's overtly sexual, unless you see woman as something that's overtly sexual? Because drag shows I've been to, at least not at least the ones that were in the daytime and not at some club with alcohol and such, but an adult club. But drag shows I've seen generally, especially the drag queen story time kind of thing, there's nothing sexual about it. It's a guy in a dress and makeup reading a story. There's nothing sexual about that unless you think dressing as a woman is overtly sexual, because women are sex objects. So that's part of it, is that our society doesn't really conceive of women as actual human beings. But another part of this reticence to want to strongly back transgender folks is the fact that men suck. We are awful. You look at all the awful statistics of murder and abuse and suicide, and men are the perpetrators of it. We're like in the 70, 80, 90% range on some of these statistics. There's something about being of male gender, masculine gender, let's say. And let me get some terms out here. See, I always like to refer to male sex, female sex, masculine gender, feminine gender. Because the way I understand this, and again, I'm an old Gen X white guy, maybe I don't understand it properly, but the way I understand it is that we have a physical body that has a sex, and we have a mental brain that has a gender. And for 90-ish% of the people, those two things line up, and for a small percentage of people, they don't. Some people got a feminine gender in a male body. And that's okay. Like, these guys that can't grasp the idea that those two things are separate, that your mind might not match your body, are the same kind of guys who spew out stuff like alpha male, beta male, sigma male, omega male. They can conceive of the idea of a girl being a tomboy or a guy being effeminate, just so long as you continue to call them a male and a female. Right? So, anyhow, I think this gets all tripped up because the outliers in the transgender debate become the whip by which the opponents beat us over the head on this issue. For example, in the transgender sports thing, it's one thing when you got some boys who were running track as ninth graders who then transition and get their hormone replacement therapy and puberty blockers, and then go to run track as, high school juniors. That's a situation, right? And we can evaluate, is that fair? They got, thinner hips and, bigger hearts and whatever. And there's a lot of controversy on that. But that's one situation. Then you get the other situation, the outlier, where you see some 40, 50-year-old man who then transitions to female and then joins his Division II college basketball team in his 40s or 50s, right? And he's like 6'8". And you see the picture of that, and you see this older trans woman who's 6'8" amongst these 20-something cisgender women. And in your gut, it just doesn't feel fair. Or you see a picture of Hannah Mounsey, who's this Australian handball player. She's like 6'2", 220 pounds, and you see her in a picture with, muscles I'm envious of, pecs and big old biceps and huge quads, blocking against some small 5'2" woman in a hijab. It's like you see that picture and you go, that can't be fair. That can't be right. Or you bring up, people bring up Leah Thomas because that's Riley Gaines likes to bring up Leah Thomas a lot. But even in the Leah Thomas case, here's someone who's like 6'4", was swimming collegiate level male and then transitions. I don't have the right answers for this. I do know one thing. I don't think it's up to the government to set the standards on these things. I don't think it's up to the government to decide who should be playing water polo and who should be playing, swimming and all that. Although I get people on the other side that argue about Title IX and having opportunities for women. But on the left, when you bring these kind of things up, the answer you get back from the left is trans women are women. Okay. Yeah, but what about this trans woman who's 6'2", 220 pounds, who's already gone through male puberty? And trans women are women. Yeah, I know, but this guy, he's like 48. He went through puberty long ago. He's 6'8". There's not a whole lot of women that are 6'8". Trans women are women, and it's just a thought-terminating cliche there. Trans women are women, and we're, on the left, you're just supposed to accept that. Anybody who says their feminine gender now must be treated as female sex, which I'm fine with in almost every aspect of the world. What we need to ask ourselves is, are there things that we are separating, male and female, that must be separated due to the inherent differences of male and female, that there is no reconciling them? So in something like sports, when you're dealing with, physical capabilities, there might be logical reasons why you might disinclude someone from the female sex sporting class whose body does not meet the capabilities range of the female body. And that's nothing to diminish what their mental gender is. There are just some aspects of being in a physical body that are going to be determinative of what you can do in life. Stevie Wonder does not get to be a pilot. It's not discriminatory to say Stevie Wonder can't fly planes. Now, if someday we come up with Geordie LaForge's visor where he can see, sure. Likewise, with trans people, with trans women, if we have methods of puberty blockers when they're young and hormone replacement therapy as they mature that provide a reasonably fair ambit of possibilities of that body to compete in female sports, then yes, okay, that works. But man, when you try to make this so inclusive, when the left tries to make this so inclusive of every possible trans person's desire, it sets up some conditions that are hard to defend. And when you get politicians in a place like that, where they don't have a clear way of defending something, they're going to opt for the path of least resistance. And I think that's what's happening in the transgender issue right now. I'm not exactly sure how to solve it, but I think one step towards solving it is for the left to admit that the phrase trans women are women is doing more harm than good. Because it forces us to try to pretend there's absolutely no difference between the bodies of a trans woman and a woman. And the other side of this, the prison side of this, is also problematic. This is where we get into the gender side of things, because what is it that makes men killers and rapists and violent? Is it the fact that we physically have penises and a Y chromosome, or is there something about masculinity that does that? Because we'll have these cases with prisoners and trans people, trans women wanting to be housed in women's prison, and then the minute one of those trans women prisoners assaults one of the cis women prisoners, that becomes the big scandal, even though cis women prisoners assault other cis women prisoners as well. So it's tough, because on the one hand, I certainly understand that there will be trans people who get in trouble with the law, and you put a trans woman in a men's prison, and that's, you know, like, this is the interesting thing to me, is like, we want to say that the trans woman's in danger in the men's prison because men are violent and predatory toward women. But the trans woman, when she goes to the women's prison, she won't be violent and predatory at all because she's not a man, she's a woman. Okay, because she says she is. But we're talking about criminals and rapists and murderers here, aren't we? Is it not possible that one or two of them might lie? Is that not within the realm of possibility? Hell, if I were facing serious felony time in a supermax prison where people might decide that I was on the menu, so to speak, I might be tempted to say that I'm transgender to get transferred to someplace safer. There's just too many incentives here, too many perverse incentives for someone to want to lie about that. So we got to find a way to address these edge cases of prison and sports to a greater satisfaction of the general public, because I think the way that we're handling the issue right now is costing us votes. Because really, on the other side of this, to people who grew up in rural America, you know, raising cows and chickens and sheep and pigs, to them, they think the whole transgender thing is absolutely insane. They really think it's just absolute lunacy. How much clearer could it be? Those critters there have penises, those critters there have vaginas, whether those critters be animals or people. That's the way they see it in normie world, in regular voter land. And while some of them are, you know, compassionate to say, you know, we shouldn't hurt people no matter what they think or how they act, they're never going to believe that a man is a woman and a woman is a man. So I think part of how the left needs to better deal with this is to stop trying to convince people to believe the ideology that we are espousing, to believe that there's male body, female body, masculine gender, feminine gender. Stop trying to get them to agree with that and believe it. I take this from my work in marijuana legalization. I always counseled activists, don't try to convince people that pot is great, that pot is wonderful, that pot cures this, cures that, it does everything, right? It may be true, but don't try to convince people to believe what you believe. Just try to convince people it's none of their business and it's not harming them. Get people on the live and let live side of things. And I think that's where we need to go with the transgender issue is no longer try to force them to repeat the mantra, trans women are women, but instead that you can think trans women are whatever trans women are, but they still deserve rights. They still deserve equal opportunity. And that discrimination against people is wrong. You don't have to understand Catholicism or black culture or the Spanish language to not discriminate against gay people, black people, religious people, whatever. Live and let live, I think, is the direction to go rather than trans women are women.
I got a lot of problems with you people. Now, you're going to hear about it.
Finally, I get a chance here to talk a little more in depth about the tragedy that befell my granddaughter, my step-granddaughter, Inez. I had Lori on the show yesterday, and you can go back and listen to the entire story if you want, but I had to keep it calm and steady to protect my lady love, who's quite overwrought about this. But now I'm alone, and I can let my true feelings be known about this, and I am so pissed off at this hospital in Susanville. A 21-year-old woman comes in, 5 months pregnant, showing big belly, is rushed in by ambulance following a head-on collision with a tree at 60 miles an hour. And the first thing they don't do is bring in an obstetrician to check out the pregnancy, to see how well the pregnancy is doing. And the reason they give is because she's 96 hours short, 4 days short of being 5 months pregnant. Because apparently under California law, for some reason, at 5 months, now it's a baby, and now we have to bring obstetricians. I don't know if this is a deal that has to do with Medi-Cal, or, the fact that she's on Medicare, Medicaid, I should say, Obamacare, whatever, that she's on government health care, that, the government's not going to pay for an obstetrician unless it's 5 months in. If that's the situation, if this is some sort of legal reasoning, that's going to make me even angrier about this. That she was 4 days short of 5 months, so you can't bring an obstetrician to check in on the baby. You give the baby an ultrasound. You give the patient an ultrasound. You detect that the baby does have a heartbeat. And as far as my granddaughter's injuries, she's bruised as hell, but she's okay. So the hospital then releases her. 5 months pregnant, hit a tree at 60 miles an hour. Oh, you're fine. Go on. We'll see you later. She leaves the hospital. A half hour later, she's bleeding from the vagina. She's in pain. She's bleeding from the vagina. They rush her back to the hospital. The hospital says, the ER staff says, you'll have to wait. You'll have to get in line. They tell her, they tell the staff, she was just here. She was just sent in on an ambulance from having wrecked into a tree at 60 miles an hour. Yeah, get in line. Can't tell you how long it's going to take. Are you fucking serious? If someone just came in off an ambulance from a head-on car wreck and a half hour later they come back in bleeding, that's not a get back in line situation. That's a, we fucked up and missed something situation. So you let her sit there in that waiting room, bleeding, fearing for the life of her third child in her belly. Her boyfriend goes up, says, oh my God, I'm worried about my wife here. She's And they're not actually married yet, but they're getting married. I'm worried about her here. She's going to lose her baby. Get back in line. Get the end of the line. And again, is this because she's on government health care? Is this because it's Medicare? Or is this because she's brown and her boyfriend's brown? So you let her sit in that room until finally my lady love shows up and realizes, looking around this crowded ass emergency room, that it's probably going to take less time to drive her an hour to Reno than to sit for another 2 hours bleeding in a waiting room. They get her to Reno. The folks in Reno are on 911 emergency stat hair on fire mode the minute they see her. Oh my God, you were in a car wreck at 60 miles an hour and now you're bleeding from the vagina when you're 5 months pregnant? Quick, get an obstetrician. First thing they did is get an OB. Of course, by then it's too late. By then the placenta had fully separated from the uterine wall. By then, little Lila Lynn, a 5-month baby in the belly, had lost a heartbeat. So my granddaughter had to have this dead baby inside her. And then had to later, the next day, deliver that little baby. Little dead baby. Because the goddamn hospital in Susanville didn't think she was worth looking at because she was 4 days short of 5 months. And then my lady love now has to try to find a fucking urn. These little tiny little urns for the cremated baby. And as if that happening during the holidays, almost a year to the time that she lost her sister, almost 2 years to the time she lost her dad. My lady love has had to deal with deaths in the family each holiday season for the past 3 years. And then on top of that, her other grandson, Inez's brother Carlos, his wife just had her third baby too. Born alive, full term, actually 3 weeks past full term. So in the same week, 2 days apart, my lady love has to kiss goodbye the corpse of the 5-month-old fetal baby who is stillborn, 5-month stillborn baby, and welcome a brand new healthy baby in the same week. So we've got a GoFundMe that's up. You can check out my website at radicalwest.com and there's a link to the GoFundMe. It's Justice for Lila Lynn, because we got to help Inez with, her costs of living. She's not going to be able to work or anything and needs help taking care of her 2 kids that are alive. And then the car she wrecked was a rental car. And so she's going to be liable for the costs of all of that because she didn't get the extended insurance. And so she's going to have to pay for the wreck of this rental car. But also, I'm reaching out to my attorney friends in California and hoping that somebody can help us, give us a referral, help us pro bono if you can, to file suit against this hospital. Because this is inexcusable. Anybody who came to your emergency room via ambulance who comes back a half hour later bleeding, even if they're not pregnant, should be seen immediately. You don't know that was some concussion that you missed or something. And as we research this and we look through the comments and the reviews of this Banner Lassen Hospital in Susanville, California, and in particular the doctor who checked on Inez, nothing but bad reviews all the way around. This hospital is a blight. So we want to take it down. We seriously want to sue this hospital into non-existence. And no, it's not going to hurt the people of Susanville, Lassen County, because there's another hospital being built on the reservation, apparently. Good people putting this hospital together. There'll be a way for people to get medical care, and they won't have to go through being mistreated and not treated at Banner Lassen Hospital in Susanville, California. All right, my friends, that's all the time we've got for this special Christmas Eve edition of the Radical Rush Show. And I don't know, I might do more shows this week for the holidays and be a good chance to get some new listeners when nobody else is putting out podcasts. And besides, I'm all alone here for the holidays anyway. Lady Love is back down there in Reno helping out her granddaughter. So the Radical Rush Show is produced, directed, researched, written, recited, posted, and catered by me, Radical Russ Belville, and governed by Creative Commons share-alike licensing. News, music, video clips, and social media posts are reproduced under fair use copyright laws for commentary and analysis. My main theme is We Love the Herb by Herbal Nation, and interstitial music is by Russ Boom Boom Belville.
What's the boom boom for?
Boom, boom, boom.
Which brings us to our post-credits scene.
Oh, just one more thing, sir. I was thinking.
And for post-credits today, I want to talk about the NFL. There are some stupid NFL rules out there that need to be changed. And the first I want to bring up has to do with my beloved Green Bay Packers, who went to Chicago and were winning that game quite well until Chicago went and knocked out our quarterback, Jordan Love, with an illegal helmet-to-helmet hit that sent him out with a concussion. Now, the penalty for such a hit in the NFL is a 15-yard personal foul penalty. That's a nice, cheap price for taking out the other side's quarterback, huh? You don't want to win a game, just take out their quarterback and only cost you 15 yards. NFL needs to do something about this. They need to look at college and how they treat targeting, because that was a targeting hit. That guy needs to be suspended and kicked out the rest of the game. Teams need to pay a penalty for purposefully trying to knock out the other team's quarterback. But that brings me some other rules the NFL ought to change. I really wish they'd change the NFL overtime rule. We've seen a couple of these overtime games, and now the overtime rules got us in a situation where each team gets to get the ball. And so the first team scores a touchdown, the other team has a chance to score the touchdown. But now with that scenario, and I think we saw this with was it the Seahawks game? I'm not sure which one. But you get this scenario where the first team that gets the ball, they score the touchdown and they kick the extra point. They're up by 7. Now that other team, when they get the ball, they can score the touchdown. They got the opportunity to go for 2 and win the game. So it sets up a different sort of scenario here. And plus, the overtime only lasts 10 minutes. And so at the end of the overtime, if they're still tied, then it's a tie. And I hate ties. So I think we should do it kind of like what we do with college, where each team gets the ball. And then if they're still tied after each team gets the ball, then you go into sudden death. That's the way it's working right now. But the problem is the clock runs out. Let's make overtime untimed. Each team gets 1 possession. First team scores, second team scores. They're still tied. Whoever scores next wins the damn game. But you keep playing until someone wins the damn game. What else we got here? Oh, the fumble out of bounds rule. We know about this one, right? Where the guy, if the offense has the ball and they're in the red zone, they fumble out of bounds at the 1-yard line, they get the ball back at the 1-yard line. But if they fumble out of bounds out of the end zone, it's a touchback and the other team gets the ball. That doesn't seem right to me. In my mind, if you're the offense and you fumble the ball, you have to get the ball back in bounds. Any other result is a turnover. So that's the way I'd change the rule. If you fumble the ball out of bounds, it's a turnover. And the other team gets the ball at where the ball went out of bounds. That way it's consistent with the out of the end zone touchback rule. The offense should not be rewarded for fumbling the ball in bounds. I mean, within the boundaries of the field rather than the end zone, I should say. Anyway, let's change that one. The other rule I want to change, the new kickoffs and extra points. We tried them. They suck. Go back to the way it used to be. First of all, with the kickoff, they got this new stupid kickoff landing zone thing, and everybody's 30 yards away from where the kicker is and all that. And the reason I don't like this, I understand they did it for safety reasons and all that, but the reason I don't like it is because it kills the surprise onside kick. We had an onside kick in that Green Bay-Chicago game, but everybody knew it was coming, which makes it even sadder that Romeo Doubs missed it. But there's no more surprise onside kick. You remember, was the Super Bowl a while back when the Saints opened the second half with a surprise onside kick? You can't do that anymore because the onside kick has to be specially set up different than the way we do regular kicks now, so it's never a surprise. And for the same reason, bring the extra point back to the 2-yard line. I know why they moved this too, because the extra point became so automatic. It was just so automatic to kick extra points that they said, well, we got to make it a little harder. But by doing that, you killed the surprise 2-point conversion. You used to be able to set up, pretend like you're going to kick the regular extra point, then you could fake it and get the fake 2-point conversion. So we've killed that play as well. If the extra points are too automatic, just allow the defensive players to use leverage. Let them launch off of the other players' backs and get higher up, and then that'll even things out a bit. Anyway, you can contact me by email at radicalruss@gmail.com. Call my message line at 877-RUSS-420. That's 877-877-420. And reach me on social media on Blue Sky as Radical Russ and nowhere else. You can support this podcast financially by donating to Radical Russ on Venmo, Rad Russ on Cash App, or via PayPal on my website at radicalruss.com. Get this podcast on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, my website, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening, and until next time, take care of each other.
Take it on one more time. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant